Hello, I am Jeremy Feador, team historian for the Cleveland Indians baseball team. I want to do a quick introduction about myself. I am a Northeast Ohioan. I'm from North Olmsted originally and went to Baldwin Wallace and got my graduate degree at Wright State in Museum and Archives. So that's my background. I love history, I love preserving history, and I love Cleveland. So I have been the team historian for the ball club since 2014. And my position falls under the communications department, so I help out with a lot of things. So if you follow us on social media and you see any sort of history post, that usually comes from me. So we're trying to get that history out there, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about today, is just how we go about preserving and getting our history out to our fans. Now, I am one of over a dozen, or about 2 dozen-ish team historians, team curators, whatever you want to call them. Baseball and history kind of go hand in hand, I think, more than any other sport. And with Major League Baseball, it goes all the way to the top. We actually have a historian of Major League Baseball, John Thorne. He is a fascinating man. You probably saw him in Ken Burns' documentary on baseball. John is fantastic. He's on Twitter and social media and always just giving you these obscure nuggets of baseball history, and I think that's one of the beauties of baseball, is just having this treasure trove of research areas. So again, baseball and history really connect. And I guess the question kind of comes up is, what does a team historian do anyway? So as I mentioned before, my focus is really getting the history of Cleveland baseball out to fans. And baseball in Cleveland doesn't start in 1901 with the American League. It actually goes back right towards, actually even a little bit before the Civil War. It wasn't necessarily organized baseball, but there are accounts of baseball being played in Cleveland. Then the Civil War happens, and then very soon after, the 4 cities organize, and I guess the rest is history, to use a cliche. But there were several teams before the Indians came about, and one of the things is, again, we have this rich history of baseball in Cleveland, and it's extremely fascinating. So I'm going to talk about 4 different ways that we go about preserving the club's history, and that's one of them. Researching and responding to fans. We get a lot of fan requests about questions of our history. A new thing I started, which is podcasting, and then overall just presenting like I am here today. So one of the points of pride, and I like to call out, is that we were actually the first team to create a team Hall of Fame and museum. If you remember the old ballpark, the Hall of Fame started in 1951, so we had a team Hall of Fame, the first team to do it in baseball. And what's neat about that is there's a gentleman named Shoeless Joe Jackson in our Hall of Fame. So when they inducted players into the Hall of Fame, Cleveland fans who voted for this actually had fond memories of Joe. And another sad aspect of that is they invited him to come back, and it was this whirlwind event where they had the vote, and like a week later they had the induction, but Joe was recovering from heart attacks and kind of put it off and didn't want to fly. And next thing you know, he died several months later, so he never got his chance to be honored. But one of the unique aspects of our Hall of Fame, and then in 1952, a museum opened, and this was between sections 11 and 12, I believe, and going through some of the archival material and trying to figure out what was in this museum is fascinating, because we have a few pictures. There's not very many that have survived, so I'm always looking to see if anyone has photos of this Hall of Fame, because there was an article in 1988 that kind of looked back and said, yeah, they had Wamby's triple play ball from the 20 World Series. They had Nap Lajoie's bat from 1904, and all these unique artifacts that were once on display. However, then the 70s happened, the team wasn't performing well, and these items kind of got boxed up and taken away, and they were stored somewhere in the ballpark. But what happened to them is kind of a mystery. So between that and that 1948 pennant that we get asked a lot about, Bill Veeck had it buried in the outfield towards the end of the 49 season. Whatever happened to that? There's these kind of Indiana Jones treasure hunts that makes my job fascinating. Like I said, many of these artifacts were packed away, and the whereabouts are unknown. But since then, we now have a more concentrated effort in place to preserve these items. And as you can see on this slide, there's some of the items we've been able to preserve. And one of the key aspects of my job is being aware of what's happening and what we need to save. And we were fortunate enough to have the 2019 All-Star Game. So as that's happening, we kind of look back because we've hosted the most All-Star Games for a city with just one team, and seeing what we had saved from the previous All-Star Games, and it wasn't much. So we wanted to be proactive. That way, when we host our next All-Star Game, whenever that may be, we have items that we can bring out and stir up those memories of fans that watched that game. Because if you had watched that game, you remember Shane Bieber coming out and striking out the side, and being in the stands for that was pretty cool, and listening to everyone chant his name. So we worked with MLB, and we were able to get Shane's batting practice jersey from that game. And obviously he kept some of the stuff, the Hall of Fame take stuff. So you're really trying to figure out what suits us best. And I think this is a great example from that event, because again, fans are going to remember that, and that connection too to Sandy Alomar, who was also the All-Star Game MVP in Cleveland in '97. So unfortunately, we don't really have anything of Sandy's from that game. So again, being proactive to save these items. And we got baseballs from the game as well. And one of the neat things too, fans, I don't think you can forget this, is the 22-game win streak. And as that was happening, you don't know when it's going to end. So the previous season, we had set our franchise win streak record, and we're creeping closer to that. So it's like, all right, we're gonna pass 14, and we're gonna get 15, and so on. So as that happens, it's like, all right, we got to start thinking about what we're going to save from this, because again, it's a franchise record. And so we get to the 15th, and I work with our baseball info guys, who are fantastic people and do great work for us as well, and kind of lump this into their job. And I say, hey, Barton Court, can you help me out? And we're going to try to get the last out ball from all these games. And fortunately for us, most of the last, actually all of them until the last game, were when we were in the field, so it's easier to get that ball back. And for all things considered, we got everything back. None of the balls got lost. If they get flipped into the crowd, we're really in a pinch. And not to sidetrack from this, but if a baseball goes into the crowd, we really can't authenticate it. For example, when Asdrubal Cabrera had an unassisted triple play, if you watch, I think it's in the film, you can see him run to the dugout and flip it into the crowd, and that ball's kind of been lost to history because we just don't know whoever caught that. Is that the ball, or it becomes a little wishy-washy. So they were able to get all the last out balls, and then comes win number 22, which, if you remember, was a walk-off double by Jay Bruce down the right field line. And fortunately for us, it was against Kansas City, and Melky Cabrera had the wherewithal not to flip that ball into the crowd, or else that would have been rough to have every single ball but that last one, and the most important one. So having that attention to what's happening, last year, 2 years, it kind of blurs a little, but we start to wear our red uniforms. Now it's the first time we've worn red uniforms since the 70s, and we had a Frank Robinson patch. So there's a lot of unique things we're trying to save, because again, it speaks to our history. And also on the slide, you'll see things, there's a program from the 40s and the 70s, but one of the most, I think, powerful artifacts that we have, and I came across it maybe a year into my job, is someone had the wherewithal to save Larry Doby's 1947 contract, where he broke the American League color barrier. And right now that contract's on display actually at the Ohio Historical Connection. So if you get down to Columbus or have a chance to go see it, it's really a neat artifact, because that's such a significant part of our history. And again, it was saved. It's got Doby's signature and Veeck, and just a really, really fantastic thing that someone, again, didn't pitch, because when you move ballparks to ballparks to ballparks, things get lost. Another example is that Ray Chapman plaque that's in our Heritage Park. It was at League Park, then got moved to Municipal Stadium, and then got stored away at Progressive Field until it was found again. And there are a lot of nooks and crannies underneath that things can disappear. But having this was great. And again, these are just some great examples of some of the things we have. And we also provide homes for artifacts, if you will. So we get calls, especially now in the pandemic. I think people are clearing out closets and figuring out, oh, I don't need, these ticket stubs, or I don't want, this baseball. And if it's something we don't have, and there's quite a bit of, things that we don't have that we need to document our history, we give them homes and put in our collection for the hopes of again, getting it out to fans and to remind people of our great history. And then just some more stuff on this slide is, there's a ball signed by Larry Doby from the '97 All-Star game. He actually threw out the first pitch of that game. One of those things, I don't know if that's the ball he threw out. You lose the provenance of an item when it gets kind of thrown together with other baseballs. My guess is it could be, it might not be. A team-signed All-Star ball, a ball from the '95 World Series, and then there's two jerseys I think are pretty fun. One is Tyler Naquin's inside the park walk-off home run, and after he had completed the circuit, the players kind of ripped at his jersey in the celebration, and they ruined it, and we were able to save it for ourselves. And I think that's a great example of the fact that, yeah, you can watch the highlight and you get excited, but in the years to come, I think it's just one of those moments where fans are going to remember where they were when that happened, and to have that jersey, 15, 20 years from now on display somewhere, will stir up those emotions. And as much as video highlights and plaques are cool to look at, I think the actual artifact is the real deal to get you excited. And that's, I think, why you go to Cooperstown or you come to the Massillon Museum to see Paul Brown's hat, because we do have a tendency, to walk in and see the Feller statue and forget that these were regular people just like you and me. So also we have Rajay Davis's jersey from the cycle he hit. So that was, you don't have a cycle every now and then. I do get asked what happened to the ball he hit against the Cubs in Game 7. I don't know. It hit camera, fell, I think, back into the field, and one of those great mysteries of everything. We do have his jersey from that at-bat, but the ball is, one of those things when the game's going on, you just kind of hold your breath that things maybe get saved, or if not, hey, someone's got a neat souvenir somewhere. And then a few telegrams one from Boudreaux to Feller when Bob was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Well, we found that when we were cleaning out the Bob Feller Museum out in Van Meter, and you'll see on this slide that we have the Bob Feller exhibit in our Terrace Club. So if you're at a ball game, you can stop on up, and that was kind of I got thrown into the fire with that. Me, Bobby D, who I imagine a lot of you know, and Bob's son Steve, we all flew out to Van Meter, Iowa. Bob had a museum out there. Van Meter is kind of a small farming town, and the museum just wasn't doing well, so we had to figure out a way to keep Bob's memory alive in Van Meter, but also find a way to get these items on display, and we brought them back to the ballpark. And one of my favorite stories after all that is the New York Times actually ran a story, and I like to laugh at myself because they mentioned Bobby D and another Indians employee, so that was me. So I was close to getting my name in the New York Times, which would have been fun, but I know I'm another Indians employee. But in that display, and some of the neat things we found are Bob's Navy jacket, so we have that on display. And I think one of the most iconic artifacts we have is Babe Ruth's bat that he used. Actually, it wasn't Babe Ruth's bat, it was Bob's bat. He was in the dugout talking to some of the Cleveland guys when they were celebrating the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, and they were celebrating the 2017. And Babe was dying of lung cancer and came out to the field, and he needed a bat to kind of stabilize himself. And the bat he took was Bob's bat, and he was holding it when I think his name's Nat Fiend took the Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph called "The Babe Bows Out." So there was a story of where the bat ended up after that, but eventually it came back to Bob, and now it's in our Bob Feller exhibit in the Terrace Club, and I think we do a pretty cool job of displaying that with the photo, and then there's a photo of Babe leaving the dugout next to the bat. So, if you don't know much about our history or baseball history, you have to know Babe Ruth. I think he's just such an iconic part of baseball history. So that is what's an artifact I really like to draw people to go see, because again, and one of those things for me that it was on loan to the Hall of Fame for a while, and when we got it back to the ballpark and we were putting things back together, I got to hold this bat, and it's one of the last bats Babe Ruth ever touched. That, and again, it's such an iconic part of our history that, it's one of those things that's not lost on me, having worked in this field for a while. It's still one of those moments where, like, oh my goodness, like, you don't want to drop this or harm it in any way, but the history to it is just phenomenal. And there's also quite a bit of traditional historical research that goes into my job. As I mentioned before, my undergrad and my grad degrees are in history, and I think it's such a valuable resource to have, to be able to look things up and figure out questions. And I think you see that now with genealogy being such a big deal too, is it's great to have these tools and these digital resources that are now available. And with baseball, I'm going to make a plug for SABR, which is the Society of American Baseball Research. And throughout the country, there's local chapters you can join, and you can get into researching just about anything. I mean, there's ballpark subgroups, there's baseball card groups, there's anything. There's even a group that focuses on the 1919 Black Sox, which you might think, well, haven't they figured everything out about them? And the answer is there's always more stuff turning up, and you see that with Chicago or New York and Cleveland. There's just so much of our history that is still to be uncovered and gotten out to our fans, because there's a lot of points of pride. One of them being we were the first team to wear uniform numbers in 1916, and didn't last long, but it was one of those moments where it's like, all right, we're a first. I know that the other team in Ohio likes to highlight their firsts, but we have a lot of great firsts here. So going back to the research, one of the avenues I help with is our team Hall of Fame that is in Heritage Park in our center field. So if you come to a game, that's always a place I like to kind of meander by before the game starts to see, people reading the plaques and seeing, what's out there. And when we have a player inducted, making sure that we have the information right that's going on the plaque, the stats right, because I've made oopsies before, and it's not a pleasant surprise when you get that note that, hey, this isn't the right number, or something got crossed along the way. So you can check out the plaques, and again, those give you the synopsis of a player's career. But also when we have statues, and recently we've had quite a few that were created. We had a Doby one, we had a Frank Robinson one, Thome's went up, and Lou Boudreau. And we have a great sculptor in Cleveland, Dave Deming is his name, and he did the Jim Brown statue as well. And being able to help him with finding photographs and making sure the numbers look right. And my favorite story with the Frank Robinson plaque is, someone either didn't have the wherewithal to save the lineup card when he became the first African-American manager in Major League history, or someone saved it and it got lost, or we don't know the whereabouts. The Hall of Fame doesn't have it. So being able to recreate what that lineup card would have looked like, finding a lineup card from the 70s, and with Baseball Reference as a great website, you can easily dig up the lineup from that day, and finding Frank's signature online and meshing that all together, and you get the lineup card that he's holding in that statue that commemorates a very powerful moment in our history. And there's a plaque at the bottom too that I got to help with. And I don't necessarily like going back and looking at my plaques, because not my plaques, but the ones I help write, just because the nerves never leave, because again, bronze is it's very hard to to alter. So that was one of another fun aspect. And we get so many calls from fans, and I just got one the other day, an email that said, hey, I think my grandfather played on this 19 whatever team, and sure enough, I go back, look it up, he had one game with us, and I think it was a pitcher. I think he lasted through the first inning, and the response I got after I sent it back was, holy blank, my grandfather wasn't good or something like that, and it was really kind of funny, and it's again a great way that we connect with our fans too, because we want fans to connect the Shane Biebers to the Bob Fellers, and listening to the game yesterday with Rosie talking about Shane's Triple Crown performance, Bob being our last Triple Crown pitcher, and the guys understand the history there and the importance of that. So we're always connecting that because you're a fan of Jose Ramirez and Shane Bieber and all these guys, but you're still a fan of Sandy Alomar, you're a fan of Joe Carter or Corey Snyder, and so on. And I could talk to my dad about Sam McDowell and his era, and that's again another fun part of baseball is this connection of generations and digging back and seeing how much the game has changed and how much it's still the same. And then again, a lot of this research goes into my new project, which is podcasting. And when life gives you lemons, I guess you make lemonade. So when we got shut down and everyone went home for the last year ago now, I was trying to find ways to get our history out to fans. And 2020 was the 100th anniversary of the 1920 team that played such a big part in our history. Had the first World Series winning team, the death of Ray Chapman, and great players like Tris Speaker and Stanley Kovaleski. So we were going to highlight that during the season, but we weren't even sure we were having a season at that point. So I was able to create a podcast called Our Tribe History, and it's available wherever you can find podcasts. And my first 10 episodes dive into kind of the start of the team and how it all transformed, and almost this made for a movie 1920 team. Before that you have the team trading Shoeless Joe but not trading Ray Chapman, and how different history could been if that went the other way around. Or then the team picks up Tris Speaker, and World War I happens and guys are going here and there, and again, if the war didn't end when it did, Speaker might have gone overseas, and again the trajectory of our history could be so much different. So we get to the Ray Chapman part and that whole 1920 season, and it's been a lot of fun because I've been able to have other baseball experts come on the show. The gentleman that wrote The Pitch That Killed about Ray Chapman, he jumped on the show and we talked about Ray's career and some of the ins and outs of that. And there's so much in terms of history to know. And then going back to SABR, there's specific historians. I was able to talk to a historian of baseball during World War I and how that affected the team, how that affected baseball being played in 1917 and 1918, and guys coming back and guys still stuck overseas. So it's fun if you're really interested in history too, to get sucked into these black holes of you're researching this, the next thing you know you're out there over there, and you really got to put the blinders on if you want to finish what you're doing. So the podcast has since expanded to different topics. I've interviewed some alumni, Ray Fosse, who was a catcher with the Indians, and we talked. That was a 2-episode podcast because he had so much good information to talk about. I mean, it's fascinating to hear all that. And we had Paul Sereno, who was a member of those '90s teams. That was a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with him too. And so it really depends on how I'm feeling or what I'm feeling with the week of what topic sounds interesting. There's a lot of freedom to talk about our history, and so that's again another way to connect. And I look at the numbers from the podcast, and there's people downloading it overseas and then different countries. So it's really heartwarming, I guess, or it makes me feel like I'm doing my job well. That there's people that are in the UK or in Australia or wherever listening to me talk about baseball history. And then finally, there's presentations, and I'm able to get out to our youth baseball camps and talk to kids about our history, and we do a good job integrating our history through the youth baseball camps. Tribe Fest, I've tried to scale that back a little bit because I usually lose my voice in the first hour, and that goes on all day, and it gets rough after a while. And then just libraries and museums and anyone that will have me, I'll come talk about different topics or baseball in general. And then another fun unique aspect is the miscellaneous stuff that comes along. And Hank Aaron recently passed away, and I was able, when we unveiled Frank's statue, to be Hank's escort, help him get around. And Hank was in a wheelchair, and he was able to get up and give his presentation, but it was tough to get around. So it was in our Heritage Park, which is down the stairs. And like I said, I like to laugh at myself. And one of the things I did was I got him into the wheelchair lift to get him back up the stairs. And when I went to step out, I split the back of my pants. So I was with Hank Aaron and Frank Robinson helping out in their suite during the game. So two of baseball's all-time greats with a ginormous split in my pants. Luckily, there were some walls I could hang by, and went off without a hitch. But every day's a new adventure. Every season brings its unique turns. You never know if you're going to have a no-hitter pitched or a triple play completed, and that's, I think, another one of these beauties of baseball. And I think after a year of being kind of corralled in the house, it's going to be nice to see people at the ballpark and just get out and enjoy a great game. And so I'm really excited about this upcoming season. And again, if you're interested, you can find me on Twitter. I do a lot of our podcasts. I'll put them out through there with some newspaper articles from those times, so you can have some more reference points and see artifacts that we may have that relate to the podcast. So follow me on Twitter, or if you need to get a hold of me through email, you can email our fan services, and those get directed to me. So if you know what happened to our stuff from our old Hall of Fame, please feel free to let me know. Or if you have old programs or ticket stubs that you don't know what to do with, I'll be happy to chat with you. Or if you just have general research questions about a player or a relative that might have played, I'd be happy to answer that. And I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at the ballpark, and go Tribe.
Sharing a big family moment, working hard from home, relaxing with a friend. Welcome to life, engaged, where reliable internet has never been more important. MCTV extends your family's reach with consistent speeds and whole home Wi-Fi, making life at home engaged, no matter what's thrown your way. MCTV, we go the extra smile.